Do you feel you were born for more? Get ready to uncover your God-given purpose so you can impact the world with your gifts, your talents, and your story. Welcome to our Purpose Power Summit series. I'm your host, Mimika Cooney, and today our guest will be sharing how to go steps from procrastination to publication. Shelley Hitz is an author coach, keynote speaker, artist, and Christian entrepreneur on a mission to help people reach others with their message. She believes every person has God-given gifts and abilities to impact the world and encourages you to let your light shine. After 12 years as a physical therapist, she became a writer and coaches authors full-time. She's authored over 40 books, including print, ebook, and audiobook formats. Her passion is to help authors succeed in writing, publishing, and marketing her books. So welcome, Shelley. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to chat to you today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, there's lots of author words in there, which is fabulous because that's exactly what we're talking about today.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to have you share your content with us. But before we get into our actionable bits, tell the audience a little bit about you and your story.
Yeah, like you said in my bio, I was a physical therapist for 12 years, thought I would do that forever, worked really hard to get that degree, but I call it the twists and turns of life. How many of you have had one of those twist or turns where something happened that you never thought you would do? I mean, God has a way of doing that, I think, for all of us. And for me, one of those twists and turns happened in 2011 when I resigned my job as a physical therapist and went into business and ministry with my husband full-time. We launched out in an RV, a little teeny tiny Toyota RV. We were planning to travel around the country here in the United States and speak. My husband had been a professional speaker traveling for 5 to 6 years at that point. And we were in the RV, planning. We took this step of faith, and all of a sudden, all of our speaking engagements stopped. So we're in the RV and we're looking at each other like, what are we going to do now? I quit my job. We rented our house. We really couldn't go back to what we had before. And it was then that I had gotten an email about a publishing class, and it was on Kindle. And at that time, we had already published books. We'd already had books, but it was more of something to have when we were speaking. It was more of something on the side, and speaking was more our primary profession. And so at that time, I decided, okay, let's do this. And I took that course that year, 2012. We published over 23 books. We started earning thousands of dollars in book royalties, enough to put gas in the RV and to buy groceries. And the rest is really history. I've been doing internet marketing since 2004. And so it just really was an easy transition into coaching authors and helping them then market their books as we had success with marketing and marketing our books. And people started asking me, how did you do this? What are you doing? Tell us. And so I have a gift of teaching, and it's been just amazing to work with hundreds of Christian authors that are publishing books, marketing books, selling books. And it's really one of the biggest surprises of my life. I never dreamed and never even wanted to write a book.
Oh, wow. So it just shows you, even though you have the innate ability, sometimes life takes on its own avenue, right? We end up being somewhere. But I always believe, because in your more extensive bio, which I didn't read out, but you did actually start writing when you were 12, right?
Well, I talk in my bio that I was paid for my writing the first time when I was in 5th grade because I won a writing contest. However, going through junior high and high school and all of that, I really excelled in math and science. And so that's what really led me. And I'm wanted to be in a helping field. So, the medical healthcare field really made sense. But yeah, I did get paid because I won 3 Susan B. Anthony points for a writing contest.
So it just shows you that the seeds get planted early. And I think for a lot of us, we lose sight along the way. They get forgotten, or they get put aside, or life happens. Like for many of us, our wives and moms, and we've got to take care of kids and the family, and that's great. But sometimes there's something in you that God's planted back when you were a kid. That's something He might be trying to reignite. And particularly about what we want to talk about today is I'm busy writing my 3rd book. And I know what a process. I always say writing a book is like having a baby. It's all excitement in the beginning, then the nausea sets in, and then you're like, oh my God, how long is this going to take? Then it gets painful. And then when you're about to birth it and finish it, it gets really painful. I'm in the delivery stage right now, so I need an epidural because this is really hard. So for me as well, I'd love to know. We're going to dive into the content. So if you're listening today and you too have God's calling you to write a book, whether it's your story or on something that you've been through, books, I think, are awesome pieces of legacy we can leave behind. No matter what we do with our lives, we can put our thoughts and our opinions and God's words into a book. It'll stay there forever to help other generations. So let's dive into really giving us some content. So if we know that the others are thinking about writing a book or in the stages of writing a book, give us some tips and that you've found in what you've been doing with authors.
Yeah, so there's actually a statistic that say over 80% of people want to write a book someday. However, someday doesn't come for most people. And I've been coaching authors for 7 years, very closely the last 3 years in a group coaching program. And in my 7 years of coaching authors, the biggest obstacles I see are actually in the mind. You know, there is a battle raging right now, and that battle is in your mind. We have a very real enemy. You know, I have my little army men here, like as reminders. We have a battle. You know, whatever your dream is, whatever your goal is, whatever God has put it on your heart, whether it's a book, whether it's a business, whether it's something else, that there's a battle raging. There's a very real enemy that wants to stop us. And especially for those of us that are Christ followers, that are Christians. I work specifically with Christian authors, and I notice that if we don't address these issues, these underlying issues of mindset and spiritual battle, that some of the other things never happen, and we just get stopped in the process. I recently started teaching art classes about 14 months ago. And that was a whole nother twist and turn of my story. I'm now an artist and I teach art classes. I'm a lettering artist and I love watercolor. But about 6 months after I first started teaching art classes online, I taught my first in-person class. Our library system has great classes and they invited me to teach. And so I was teaching this art class. I'm standing in front of the class and sharing my story and how I got into art. And someone there in the class in front of everyone was like, I cannot believe you're teaching art without an art degree. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, what do I say? And immediately my, the stinking thinking, that battle in my mind started coming up of, yeah, you don't have a degree. Why are you doing this? Like, you don't have any reason, qualifications and all of this. And that's the voice of shame. Shame says we're not good enough. So sometimes when we start to write or we want to write a book, immediately you may think, but I'm not qualified. I don't have a degree. I'm not good at writing. Who am I to write a book? No one in my family has ever, done this. Or, I have someone in my family that's a professional, author and, teaches English and does all this. And who am I to do this? So sometimes immediately it comes up like, I'm not qualified. Who am I to do this? And I just took a deep breath when that happened to me. And I told my friend Kimberly Del Coco's story. She grew up in a very troubled home. She was very abusive, very volatile, a lot of alcoholism and different things going on. And she never finished high school. She was a 9th grade dropout. And yet she went on to manage college educated people in one of the top companies in the nation. And she never had a college degree herself. She never even finished high school. So, sometimes it doesn't matter, having that piece of paper, that qualification to say you're good enough, and if God's called you to do it, He will provide for you. Just a week before that happened, my sister was talking to me about Moses, because I was saying, I was even feeling it then, like, who am I to be teaching these art classes? And my sister was like, Moses said, who am I to go to the Israelites? And God said, I am the I am. And so I think the first step is just realizing if God has called you to do this, He is the I am. He will provide. He will do what you need to, to do to accomplish what you need to accomplish. And He did so much through Moses. I was actually just rereading that in the last few weeks. And it's just amazing what God did through Moses, just being willing. So I think one of the first steps is just giving ourselves permission. Like, write yourself a permission slip. I give myself permission to write. I give myself permission to explore my creativity. I give myself permission to use the gifts God's given me. I give myself permission to do this. And sometimes we just need permission to follow the dream that God has given us. And if you have a dream to write a book, if you have a calling to write a book, if you have that burning desire to write a book, guess what? God will do it in you. But sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission and say, it doesn't matter what piece of paper I have, what qualifications I have. Like, do you have qualifications right now to be writing the book that you have? Do you have like degrees and certifications and things like that? Or is it on your life experience?
Yeah, exactly. Well, for me, it's personally about my this book, this is funny you should say that. The first two books I wrote were through a traditional publisher, were very much about business and marketing for photography, because I'd been a photographer for years. But when it's very much technical based, it's one thing. But when it starts becoming like this third book of mine is my personal journey with the Lord and my story, and I believe it's one of three books I need to write. But as you say, the mental battle I've had, like, who am I? Like, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to college. I learned things through the life of the school of hard knocks. But, I've always loved writing. I used to write as a kid, and this constant battle. And that has been what I'd be called being stuck in procrastination station, because you get so stuck, you're too scared to buy a ticket to get on the train because you don't think you're worthy enough to be on there. So I definitely have to agree with you. The mindset thing was the hardest thing, but now that I've got my butt down and I've got a framework and a writing, it's probably going to be done in 6 weeks.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, it's just getting over that hump. And, I got over that hump. I thought, I am helping a lot of people, and God has given me a gift of teaching. I know what it feels like to be a beginner. I now earn money every month, over $1,000 every month from teaching online. I just got invited to one of the top Christian author conferences to do a full day lettering workshop. Like, all these opportunities are opening, things are happening. But if I would have said at that moment, oh, but who am I? I'm not qualified. If I would have stepped back, none of that would have happened. And so God is able to do what we're not able to do. And so I encourage you to just look into that. And, another thing that stops a lot of people is just fear of what will people think, fear of, will I fail? Fear of, will I have enough money to do this? Fear of all sorts of things. And the honest truth is we all have them. We're not alone. No, none of us are alone. And I just, I'm sure you believe the same thing. It's like action cures fear. So what is one small thing you can do today?
Exactly.
Just choose a 15-minute goal, a 5-minute goal, something like, say, I'm going to sit down and write for 15 minutes. And I bet if you just sit down and write for 15 minutes, that 15 minutes will turn into longer. If you just sit down right now and just sit down for 15 minutes or 5 minutes and brainstorm book topics or brainstorm a book outline, I bet once you start doing that initial thing, put a timer down. Once that timer goes off, I bet you'll be in a flow and you'll keep going. Sometimes we just need to start. We need to say, okay, I'm just going to do something little. Instead of looking at the whole project, the whole thing, let's just do the next right step. Let's just do the next little thing. And that's the other thing with overwhelm. A lot of people get overwhelmed when they think about writing a book. Well, you know what? You write a book one word at a time, one sentence at a time, one paragraph at a time, one chapter at a time. And so, it's just breaking it down into doable action steps. And a lot of people also get stuck with perfectionism of it needs to be perfect. I have to have it perfect the first time. But what I say to my clients, I was on a 2-day virtual writing retreat with my Author Audience Academy members, and some of them were struggling with this. And I said, remember, your first draft is never your final draft. And that gave so much freedom, because I think they were trying to make their first draft their final draft. And if you try to write in perfection, it's going to shut down the creative flow. You have this right brain, which is more of the creative flow. The left brain is more the analytical flow. So if you're trying to be in that creative mode, but then you're self-editing, you're like, is that the way it's spelled? Is that the correct punctuation? Does that sound right? Da, 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 and you have your inner critic.
Yeah.
We have an inner critic. And if you're trying to flow in that creativity and tell a story and talk about this thing, but then you have that inner critic bouncing in all the time, it's going to conflict. And you're probably going to it's going to be like this unending loop that you never get out of because of that perfectionism. I love this quote by Julia Cameron. She says, perfectionism is not a quest for the best. It is a pursuit of the worst in ourselves. The part that tells us that nothing we do will ever be good enough, that we should try again. And so it's an unending loop. It's just a loop, 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 loop. And it's basically that coming back to that thing of I'm not good enough, that shame, instead of saying, oh, but I want to make it the best that I can. I have to keep editing. I have to keep doing. That's not what it's about. There's a deeper issue. And so perfectionism is definitely something that I've seen a lot of authors get stuck in, but it's definitely something, once you flip that switch of like, my first draft is not my final draft. I usually recommend several versions of self-editing, and, have a professional editor. You can have beta readers, proofreaders. Like, there's so many layers that are going to come later. Give yourself a break. Like,
I think it was like getting the content out is hard. Like for me, I was bulleting. Also, I'm terrible. I'm like, because I'm always thinking, okay, is this going to sound right? And then, trying to go back and you stop the creative flow. But you know what I actually found when I was doing one? I went on a long car ride the one day to visit my daughter in college, and I got an audio and I just started talking. Because I'm a speaker who loves to write. I'm not a writer who speaks. So for me, it was easier to speak first, even though the grammar was awful. And I'm like, whatever. And it was all over the place. I basically, dictated it, if you want to call it that, into a little app. And then the app actually was connected to a transcription service. So for $1 a minute, I was able to get 13,000 words done in one day. I was like, oh, yay. And then it felt like that kind of broke it. Once I felt like, oh, there's 13,000 words there. I've got some words. I have some little win. Even though it was a hot mess and things needed a lot of editing.
Oh, for sure.
Just sort of like getting it out there, I think, was just the first initial step. So
and I always say, if you don't have a first draft, you have nothing. And so if you get stuck on any of these mindset things, then you don't finish the first draft, and then you never finish. You never publish. You never have that sense of accomplishment of what God's called you to do, leaving that legacy, growing your business through your book. A book is the best business card you can have. You can give a book to somebody and they're not going to throw that away. I could not ever throw a book away, but they'll throw your business card away in 2 seconds. And so, there's so many reasons to have that book finished and to reach more people with your message. I have people that email me almost every week that are they say, thank you for sharing your story. It gives them hope. It gives them life. One of my most powerful books is a book that I never wanted to write. It's a book for Christian women who struggle with pornography. And I had struggled with that. And God very clearly showed me I needed to write that book. And I don't share the gory details. I share mostly the side of hope and what God did and what the hope is for them, and some of the practical things that God took me through. And so I get people emailing me all the time. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for sharing your story. And if I would have never finished that first draft, if I would have never published that book, I have no idea. Like, there are people right now waiting for the book that you have in you. They're waiting for that. There's people right now that God wants to impact and wants to change through that. But if you don't have your first draft, you don't have anything. And so
exactly. So that's why it's so important to get it out. And I think if we stop thinking about it's all about me and what people are going to think, and we start thinking, I really started to get a breakthrough when I realized that, I am somebody's answer to prayer. By me writing this book is giving somebody hope that they are looking for. And by me not doing it is holding up their release or their breakthrough. So I was like, okay, well, I've got to do this now. This is serious. This is other people are relying on me. So if you kind of think of it that way, that what you have to share is so important to someone else that you can't afford to keep it to yourself.
You know what? Sometimes even like what you were saying, like, it's so hard. It's like giving birth. It's so painful. But what if we change our mindset and say, this is fun? Like, I get to use a creative gift that God's given me. This is actually fun to be able to create something, to be able to put my words on paper, to see something come to life. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. I love starting from nothing and then seeing something come to life. It never gets old for me to see a new book birthed into the world. I get excited. I get it's fun. It is amazing. And it provides a really decent income for us, And so, what if we just change that mindset? Instead of saying it has to be hard, what if we say, God, this is an adventure with you. I want to have fun with you today. I want to write with you today. I want to write what you have. I want to write in that creative flow. And yes, we are going to have times where it's going to be hard, but that's why I recommend having an outline. So, if you have a basic outline, some writers will say they are pantsters, which means they fly by the seat of their pants. But I even think pantsters, if you're a fly by the seat of your pants type of writer, if you have a basic outline, you will not face writer's block, because when you have an outline, okay, the next story I'm going to write about is this. Or especially if it's nonfiction or even fiction, like, you can skip to a different scene. You can skip to a different story. You can skip to a different chapter and say, I'm not feeling this today, but I want to write about this today. And then
Mm.
you write like the things that you're excited about writing, and that it's fun, and that you're writing with God. You're writing out of your creative gift, out of the gift God's given you. I have a gift of teaching. I don't necessarily have a gift of creative writing, but I flow out of that gift of teaching and sharing. I have a gift of vulnerability and sharing my testimony, and God's used it in powerful, powerful ways.
It's amazing
And
like when you've stepped out, right? When you started to take those steps and say, okay, God, use me with whatever I have, that's when things start to flow. So I'm going to say, we could sit and talk all day, but let's wrap it up with, before we, tell us the tips. If you had to give us like actionable tips today, what would you say to the people listening today?
So a few years ago, I went on a search of writing productivity tips. And because I saw some of my clients immediately would get tons and tons done and then publish their book. And some of them would just get stuck and never publish a book. And I'm like, how can I help them? And God gave me an idea to start a 7-day writing challenge. It's called writingweek.com. And it's free, but writingweek.com, I share about the Pomodoro technique. So in my research, and I read a lot of books, I studied, I researched everything I could find. 90% of the authors said that the Pomodoro technique helped them to write more and faster and more efficiently, more productively. The Pomodoro technique is basically where you write for 25 minutes. So you have a deadline. Basically, the concept is giving your brain a deadline. How much do you get done the day before you leave for vacation?
Yeah, you cram it, right? When you know you have to have it done.
You get a lot, or like in college when you had like, papers due and stuff, like you get it done because you know you have a deadline. So basically the 25 minutes, you're giving your brain a deadline. I'm going to write for 25 minutes. And then when the timer goes off, you give yourself a 5-minute break. So the 5 minutes is like a resetting. Instead of just pouring. You're like, you get a chance to breathe, stretch your, muscles, because being at a computer typing or writing, you can get overuse injuries. Take a 5-minute break and then come back, write for another 25 minutes. Take a 5-minute break. Do that for 2 hours, and then you take a longer break of at least 30 minutes. Go on a walk, have a cup of coffee on your porch, spend some time with your family or your dog, or, do something other than work. And then, you can jump back into it. But I have found, like, we actually host a live 2-hour writing sessions where we're coaching you through this process in Author Writings Academy. And what I found is when we started doing this as a group together live, we just got tons and tons done. This is actually another way that, another method that I use on my in-person Colorado writing retreat. And I've had people finish first drafts in 2 days of writing because we're using this Pomodoro method, and it's chunks of time. You're in the flow, you come with an outline, you come prepared, you know what you're going to write about, and then you just write. And so the Pomodoro technique is one thing I really recommend trying. And then one of the tips that I had was what you mentioned is, if you're a speaker more than a writer, try either dictation or transcription. So I have a book called Procrastination to Publication. It's kind of the same title that we titled this interview. And I talk about how to write and publish a Kindle nonfiction book in 7 days. I've literally done that several times. And the way that I wrote Procrastination to Publication, the way that I wrote that book is I had my detailed outline, and then I spoke out the book. I know that information so well. I'm an expert in that material. It's just, it's something that I know so well. I could just speak it out. So I spoke it out in an hour. Then I had that hour audio transcribed. It ended up being about 10,000 words. Then I took it, I had it edited, proofread. I added, resources, different things, had it professionally edited. It ended up being about 12,000 words, or about 76 pages. And it all started with a 1-hour audio. So if you can write out an outline, and if you can talk out your book in even just an hour, you could literally have a book. And that's a print book, it's an ebook, it's an audiobook, and it's become like, it became a training course in my program. And then my program, Author Writings Academy, was based upon that information. So it all started with that 1-hour audio. You can also then dictate. Google Docs, I don't know if you're familiar, but Google Docs has a free voice dictation feature. You have to activate it. But once you activate it and you're using the Chrome browser, you can dictate into your computer and you can speak out your book. So there are ways to get your book done. You can use your smartphone. You can use apps like Google Docs, and speak into that. I had a client, she just would speak into her phone, and then she would email it to herself. So there are so many ways that you can get your book done. And what I always tell writers is, don't try to shove a square peg into a round hole. If you are a certain way, and this is what works best for you, speaking your book, speak your book. If it works best for you to write it out by hand, like my mom, she just gets stuck if she starts typing, because then she starts editing. She sees all the little things. And so she came, and she actually is the cook at our writing retreats. So she'll write with us, and she's written books at my writing retreats. Well, the last one, she had gotten stuck. And so she's like, I'm going to try something different. I'm just going to take my notebook and I'm going to write out by hand. I think she had like one chapter that she didn't finish. She almost wrote out her entire book in 2 days. And, she was even cooking and doing other things. And it was because she used what was working best for her. For me, I would get stuck if I was writing it out by hand. It'll
take way too long.
Yeah. I'm like, no, that would just stunt me. But for her, it worked. So use what works best for you. And in my free 7-day challenge, I help you discover that. What is going to work best for you by tracking some of your writing. Even if you just track for 1 week, you'll get a lot of insight. And then you can use that to really get your book done.
So tell us a little bit about your the gift. So everybody knows that we've given you great content, and Shelley's given you some great tips. So we want to take it a step further. So if you go to mimikacooney.com and click on the Summit tab, you'll be able to download all the gifts from all of our speakers. But particularly, tell us about the one that you're offering today, Shelley.
So it's a 1-page PDF with 5 tools I use for self-publishing books. And it just has simple tools, things that I've used. Some of them will save you tons of money. It will save you time. But just the tools that if you're wanting to write, definitely download this PDF. Check out those 5 tools that I share with you and get that information today.
Exactly. Well, I'm so excited about all this, because we could talk this a hand of a donkey, like, oh, what are the things? What about this? But that's why we have you if you are writing a book or thinking about writing a book, definitely go check out Shelley's resources. She's got some great tools. So tell everybody how they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, trainingauthors.com, and I have tons and tons of free material. If you go to trainingauthors.com/free, you'll find all my free training. But if you want to write a book, I recommend you take my free webinar, Book Writing Formulas, that every nonfiction author needs to know. So just go to trainingauthors.com/formulas, and you'll be able to take that free webinar. I actually walk you step by step through choosing your book topic, outlining your book, and actually deciding how you're going to write it. So it's like you will leave with an outline if you take that webinar. And then my free 7-day writing challenge I've been talking about is writingweek.com. And if you want a community and more coaching, authorwritingsacademy.com is where I do all of my coaching. And so I love helping authors. I have tons and tons of free training. And so definitely check it out.
So we definitely no excuses to stop, that procrastination, right? We now have the tools and the resources and the information just to at least take that first step. So I've got to say, thank you so much for joining us. I've got to say, if everybody who's listening, if you enjoyed today's content, make sure to share it with your friends, because I'm sure there's somebody that needs to hear what Shelley has to say, and to really get us taking those next actionable steps so we can activate you into doing what God's called you to do. So make sure to click the link below the video, as well as to go to my website, mimikacooney.com, to get those resources. And all the links we mentioned will be under the video. So make sure to check those out, especially all the ones, ton of them that Shelley's been able to offer. I want to say thanks, Shelley, so much for sharing your awesomeness with us today. And I really appreciate the time. I know I'm going to have lots of feedback, and people, a lot of books are going to be birthed. I can just see it.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I just want to close with this one thought. What if I could tell you a simple way that you could have 9 working weeks, like 40-hour working weeks, to do whatever your dream is, whether it's to write a book, whatever your dream is. Would you be excited about that? It's definitely possible, because listen to this. If you were only to invest 1 hour per day in working on one thing in your life, then in 1 year, you will have invested 9 40-hour work weeks in that one thing. So my question for you today is, what will you spend your 1 hour on today? If your dream is to write a book, I hope you will spend that 1 hour writing your book. I call those power hours, and it is powerful. It adds up, and you will finish your book if you take consistent action.
Exactly. That's excellent advice. You know, for anybody in life in general, let's just really take that first step, right? What can you do with what you have available? So I'm going to say thank you so much for sharing all this awesome content. I can't wait to hear all the feedback that we're going to get from everybody who's enjoying this content. And I can't wait to hear, if you decide to write a book after hearing Shelley's tips, let us know. We'll celebrate with you. So thanks again for joining us on our Purpose Power Summit series. Until next time, take care. Become a partner and join the Mimika TV family today.